Hi, I'm Luke,
And I'm TJ.
and welcome to Beyond the Building.
Give me the Bible, holy message shining. Thy light shall guide me in the narrow way. Precept and promise, law and love combining, till night shall vanish in eternal day.
Welcome to Season 2, Episode 10 of Beyond the Building. We are excited to have you here. Please join us in this Bible study. We are available on YouTube and Spotify every Friday at 9:30 Eastern Standard Time. And the whole premise of this show is that oftentimes we will be in our Sunday assemblies and our midweek Bible studies, or any times where we will gather with the saints, and we'll be so energized, so invigorated. We'll have a zeal for God, a fire, a passion. And then maybe during the middle of the week, things get busy, things bog us down, and we kind of start to lose that fire and that passion. So our goal here is to encourage Christians to study and to go beyond the building, beyond the church building, and really desire God's word and have a passion for personal Bible study. So with that, it is Luke's turn this week. Luke, what story do you have for us this week?
Yeah, so I'm on spring break. That's one of the reasons why we have this
Yeah, we're
old format.
we're back to the
Um,
olden days, ye old
yeah,
Discord.
the old in Discord. Um, so I've been on spring break, and I've been with my family, and it's been fun to see them, especially since life has been really busy for me
Yeah,
since starting medical school. Um, and uh, what was really interesting, we got to go to like a Bible museum in
that's cool.
LaGrange, actually, uh, and it was interesting. They had like a lot of interactive stuff, so that was cool. One of the coolest things though was we got to eat a Passover meal, kind of like a traditional Passover meal.
Ah,
Um,
interesting.
so that was fun. Uh, we were in this like dark room with the oil lamps, and this the tour guide was explaining the different foods and like what they meant, and how like some came to be introduced to the Passover meal and some that were commanded by God. And uh, they like unveiled the food, and it was pretty good, like a general good spread, except when it came to the unleavened bread.
Uh-oh.
I was expecting like I don't know what I was expecting. I was expecting something more, I guess, traditional or something closer to like naan or something. I don't know. Not
Yeah,
does not
yeah.
have leaven? It may,
I don't know.
but I was expecting something like that. But they were just tortillas,
Oh, huh.
like store bought tortillas. So that was a little disappointing. I was like, oh, okay, tortillas. I don't think they had tortillas in the first century. Maybe you're wrong, but that it was fun. It was just like that one little thing was kind of surprising.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that sounds like a good time. I didn't know they had that in Lagrange.
Yeah, it was like just tucked in the woods somewhere. It was kind of surprising, but it was cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. Um, Glad that was a good time. So with that, we will kind of get into our topic for this week, which is the Christian and social media. It's funny because that's kind of what we're doing here, right? um, and so it's like, well, you may or may not be expecting us to navigate some of the less ideal aspects of social media, but you should, because we're going to. But it's ironic because that's kind of what we're doing here. And but I think through this study, we will get a deeper understanding of social media and how it can impact the life of the Christian, and how the Christian can use social media to their advantage, especially when sharing the gospel and being involved. Um, so first, we want to, as we will often do on this show, provide the definition of words. So the definition of social media. Really, forms, this is Merriam-Webster's definition, forms of electronic communication such as websites or social networking and microblogging through which users create online communities to share information, ideas, personal messages, and other content such as videos. Now, my definition that I personally came up with is really just any electronic media where the social aspect is the focus. So, like, as opposed to video games, of course video games have a social aspect, but I don't think that's the focus necessarily of like a multiplayer game, right? Doing a chat feature. It's not necessarily the primary focus. It can be, but it's not always. So in this episode, we're really going to focus on when we say social media, it's more platforms such as Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, which is now X, which I feel like it's kind of funny. We're always going to say people who were around when Twitter was Twitter, right? We're always going to be like, Twitter, now known as X, but it's just X now. Like, the kids, like, in the next generation are only gonna know X, which is kind of crazy to me. But anyway, so more websites and apps such as those, that'll kind of narrow down our definition and kind of help us understand what we're going for here. So really, this is, I would say this episode is going to be less of a strict Bible study, but more of just a conversation and a discourse of, like, what do we personally think of social media, and how can we work that into our lives if we do use social media? How can we please God and do things that are acceptable to Him through that? So
We've kind of talked about this before, but the Bible doesn't really it doesn't cover everything, right?
of course,
Social media wasn't around when the Bible was written,
exactly.
and that's fine. And so we can't really say, oh, well, here are some handy verses to help think about social media. We are going to do a little bit of that in the fact that we're going to, as we're talking about it, we're going to bring up different passages or principles found in the Bible to help guide our discussion.
Yep.
But this is one of those things where we have to use discernment about of the scriptures, and then apply those principles and things that we can glean from the scriptures to aspects that are kind of outside the Bible.
Yeah, most definitely. Using biblical principles to guide modern day decisions, which, put that on a t-shirt or something. Or maybe we should make that our slogan or something. Well, we already kind of have one, but if we were to make another one, that'd be kind of fun. Yeah, second slogan. So I guess I'll kind of go first with, we each kind of came up with 3 points, 3 aspects of social media that we think are beneficial and, I don't want to say detrimental, but that's like really the opposite of beneficial. But I mean, that are not good, right? So we'll get good and not good. So at least for me, and we can kind of combine our points together here, just so we don't like repeat the same ones over and over. For me, I mean, the first good thing about social media is the social aspect, right? As people, we see from Genesis that man is not meant to be alone, right? We are social creatures, right? We want to have fellowship. God designed us that way, and we see that with the institution of the church too, and how the church is purposed and used in that regard as fellowship. So look, it keeps us connected with friends. It's so encouraging. Well, first of all, I think it's so cool. Like I'll see some people, that I went to high school with who are now, and I'm sure you're probably more in this position than me at this point in my life, but like, you check people on Facebook or Instagram and it's like, man, these people are getting married now. That's crazy. It's like, we're growing up. It's so crazy. But it's always so encouraging to see those things, and it's a really special thing. And of course, in terms of more of the religious aspect, right? It's so encouraging to see the work being done around the brotherhood, right? If someone posts on Facebook like, hey, took a mission trip to XYZ place, we had 30 baptisms. It's like, man, that is so encouraging, to see the gospel being shared and to see the good works that the brethren are doing. Luke, can you pull up 1 Thessalonians 5:11 for me? We'll kind of touch on a couple verses here and there that will kind of explain these points. 1 Thessalonians 5:11 is my verse that I chose for this one, really.
First Thessalonians 5:11 says, "Therefore comfort each other and edify one another, just as you also are doing."
Yeah, so there's this aspect of building the brethren up, edifying one another, so we can continue um, and not get discouraged. And I'm part of this men's group on Discord. We meet every week, and that's such an incredible time of fellowship, but also like spiritual growth, spiritual knowledge. Just to know that, man, there are other guys out there who are doing the same things as me, and continuing to work for the Lord and do the best they can every single day. So it's stuff like that that is a really great thing about social media. You can kind of touch on your ideas about this.
Yeah, so this was actually one of my main points about why social media, or a way that social media can be good, is that it promotes connection,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you touched on this. It helps us keep up with one another. It helps us keep up with our old friends and family, and like honestly, it's what it was marketed originally for,
Yep.
right? It's a way for you to have a connection with someone where you otherwise couldn't. And obviously that's one of the benefits of living in the 21st century, is that we have the internet and things like this where we can, we don't have to lose our second cousins to just, well, we moved away and we never,
Yep.
we forgot about that side of the family. Well, that doesn't have to happen now. um, and that's a good thing. It's what it was designed for, and I think you hit on that, mainly. uh, but it also helps with very isolated communities, right?
Mm-hmm.
It helps us, if you have, this is maybe in a secular sense, but if you have a very like niche hobby, it
Yeah.
can help you find other people who also have that niche hobby, instead of you just being the only person in your town who, I can't think of a good niche hobby right now. I don't know.
Underwater
Collects
basket
buttons.
weaving.
Yes, underwater basket weaving, something like, I don't know. But it can promote that sense of community. But then also, um, we both live in the South right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's known for being saturated with churches, but that's not true everywhere you go. I've had the, depending on how you consider it, I guess the privilege and the pain of living abroad, not outside the country, but towards the west, and places where there are not as many congregations. And I was not old enough then, and social media wasn't as big then to for me to really notice this, I guess. I don't think I even had any sort of device at that time.
Yeah.
But I can imagine, right? Okay, well, if there's me and my church of 20 people, and those are the only Christians I know around me, how beneficial, like you were saying, would it be to see the church abroad,
Yep.
right? And just, a few states over that is doing so well, and so it can allow us to have that connection with one another. So you talked a lot about that, and I think that it's what it was designed for. It was designed for social connection. Um, so that's obviously a benefit.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And my my second one, which it's kind of funny because like our points are so synonymous, which I think is really cool. How we did that way, maybe unintentionally, maybe intentionally. Um, but
Not
like
intentionally for me, so.
yeah, no, so that's pretty cool. Um, so for me, my second one is generating ideas, um, because as someone who is in the market of preparing lessons and putting sermons together and things of that nature, it is so helpful as a young Bible student to be able to have so many of these resources, and where I can just look up, hey, like what's a good sermon on XYZ topic, and a bunch of stuff will come up from so many amazing brethren that we have, who've put a lot of work into their studies and various different sermons. So we have a lot of ideas of like, oh man, that was a really good point that he made. I'm going to put that in my lesson too, or man, oh, that maybe I don't agree with that point. That's something I really need to study, So it helps us generate a lot of ideas and can motivate us in our studies to study even more, to study more in depth. And that's kind of where we are trying to go with this show, right? I hope and pray that however many out there will see and join us in this Bible study. And, if you are joining us for this Bible study, I hope you are watching this and maybe you can generate some ideas. Maybe this gets you thinking and will motivate you to dive into a topic that you might not have thought of before. So that's what I would say with that.
My second point is closely related. When I was coming up with these ideas, I wasn't necessarily thinking about generating new ideas, but I was thinking mostly just about the wellspring of information that social media provides, right? Again, another benefit of living in the 21st century, everything you could possibly ever want to know is on a device that you keep in your pocket. Like,
Yeah, definitely.
that's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And social media is one of those ways that we can learn things. We can see what other people are up to for different projects, kind of like what you were saying, but it could be for whatever you're trying to learn about. Um, and then also, I think one of the other things is that it helps us, especially for Christians, right? It helps us stay kind of culturally relevant because we do need to know what's going on in the world. What are people concerned about? What do they want to know the answers to? Um, so it can be helpful for us kind of having a finger on the pulse of society, if you will.
Yeah.
Um,
Interesting.
and then also, I think people. It's been said that kind of like, oh well, the nation's never been this corrupt, or I think it has been corrupt. I think just the world is corrupt. Um, but it's just we didn't know about it. It wasn't
Sure.
as obvious
Yeah.
because people weren't posting a video they took as they saw it happening immediately on social media, and then it goes viral. Like we live in an age where information spreads like wildfire, um, which is a good or bad thing. But I'm counting it in the good thing for now because if you don't post anything and you're just watching things, you could maybe learn. Um, so anyway, it's what verse is it that says be harmless as doves but wise as serpents?
Ooh, that's a good one, but I don't remember.
Matthew 10:16.
Mm.
Yes, Matthew 10:16. Uh, be as wise as serpents and yet as harmless as doves. Now, I think that's talking about um, the limited commission specifically, but obviously that's a good parable and it rings true, right?
Yeah.
We need to know what's going on in the world. We need to have our wits about us. We need to be wise. You can't be wise if you don't know how, like if you just don't know any of the information to start out with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wisdom is kind of the application of knowledge,
Yeah.
uh, but you have to know it initially. And social media, I think, is one of the ways that we can learn specifically about society.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah. Definitely. That's a fantastic point. My last point is evangelism, right? An incredible benefit of social media is the amount of evangelistic work that we can do on social media, especially for maybe people of the younger generation, right? Kind of around our age, where we are more involved in social media than, say, people in a couple generations ahead of us. There's so much opportunity and a wide landscape for us to be able to evangelize and make videos because look, people are on social media all the time. You never know. People are scrolling and they find a video that says something that sparks their interest about studying or about God, period, and then that leads them down a rabbit hole of really great study, a positive rabbit hole as opposed to a negative rabbit hole as we might see sometimes. But that being said, there's incredible opportunity. Like we've kind of been saying over the whole of this episode, we're in an era where the message we preach can go pretty much everywhere, generally speaking, right? It can go to most places. So there's a large scope that we have, and we see that in Matthew 28:18-20 being the Great Commission. Go ye therefore, right? So we have the command to go and then preach the gospel to every creature. So we have the scope and the person that the types of people that the Great Commission is commissioned to, being the Christian. So we have go ye therefore, the command, go, and then the scope, preach the gospel to every creature. So meaning as many as we can, go and do that. So an incredible benefit of social media is that wide scope of evangelistic activity that can go on.
Definitely. My last point, was pretty much the exact same thing. Is that it broadens our reach, right? You can talk to, I don't know, depending on your personality, you can talk to maybe as few as 10 or as many as 100 people during a day without getting tired. Um, and you can also post, a 10-second video talking about the Bible that 100 people see or millions of people could potentially see.
Yeah.
And so it broadens our scope. When I was thinking about this, I was reminded about a post I saw. I don't remember the influencer's name, but I saw it on Instagram. And it was a person basically doing a skit about Paul being in the 21st century and saying to a modern day Christian, "Wow, you have access to like everyone on here."
Yeah.
And you obviously are posting all the time, right? You're obviously trying to reach as many of them as you can. And the person was like, "Well, no, not really." And Paul was obviously disappointed, right? Paul went to where the people were. He went to the synagogues. He went to he went out in public. He discussed with people. In Acts 17, he went on Mars Hill and discussed God with the philosophers there, right? He went to where the people were and he discussed the gospel with them. And if the people are on social media, we can go there. Now, that being said, I have spoken against general evangelism on social media before. I still hold to that. I think, and the reason I hold to that is because I don't think people think about it as deeply as they should. For the same reason why it's such a good thing to do, right?
Yep.
One of the reasons why we're doing this show is so we can do that. So we can try to reach people, so we can encourage Christians, so we can kind of expand our reach. But we're trying to do it in a very organized and thoughtful way. And I could be wrong. I don't think that a short comment in a broader discussion or a debate in the text, in the chat beneath a post or sharing a random short video to your story, I don't think that has as much thought behind it as does the content we're trying to make, if I may be so bold, or is necessary for it to be helpful, which will tie into a point I want to make later. But we sometimes I'll save that point, but for later. But we often will treat social media as just kind of this flippant thing where we can passively engage with it. Well, we sometimes forget that these are real people behind the screen, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why it's very important that we handle social media in a very serious way. And yeah, I'll say more about that later. But for right now, as we're talking about the benefits of social media, these are real people we're engaging with. Every number, every Facebook friend is a real person. Hopefully, sometimes sometimes it's bots, but hopefully it should be real people. Every comment that is made, hopefully, on a video or a post is a real person. Every like represents a real person. That's a person that you could potentially reach with the gospel, and that's why the gospel can be super beneficial.
Yeah, and it's thinking about that social media or the evangelistic aspect of social media has a caveat and has some catches to it, right? Like, is that the most effective way to evangelize? Not necessarily, right? Is that if you were to choose to evangelize in various different ways, should that be the only way I think you should choose to evangelize? Most definitely not, right? I think social media is a tool that we have for evangelism, but in my personal opinion, I think if we're looking wisely at things, it should not be the only way that we choose to evangelize, right? Because look, we need to have Bible studies with people. Like, we can say it's outdated, but it works, like we can say it's outdated all we want, but it really does work. So
I don't think any of us put this as kind of a point against social media.
Sure.
So I'll bring it up now. But social media is not a replacement for real life connection. It's
Yep.
not a replacement for genuine social interaction.
Yep.
Um, and that's honestly, you can make the point that that's probably the biggest harm social media has played in our society. Um, and it's the same for evangelism, right? It can never take the place of just sitting down with someone and having a Bible study with them.
Yep.
Like it's just not going to. It could have very similar effects. It could be very impactful for someone's life, but in actually like in actually reaching someone and building a connection
Yep.
between two people, it's not the same.
Yeah. So, so kind of to summarize what we said with this point, evangelistically, look, there are some incredible benefits. People are on their devices all the time. It's a very good way to reach people, but it is not a substitute for stopping the behavior of going out and actually talking to people, building connections. Because look, who knows? You know, like I always say, who knows if there is, someone similar to me out there, right? Who does a bunch of research on their own and comes across a lot of great resources and is like, wow, that's actually incredibly helpful for me and invaluable information. I just happened to get it through, through some faithful brethren sharing the gospel, right? Or, that may not work for everybody. And in fact, it doesn't work for everybody. So we got to keep that in mind when we're doing stuff like that. So with that, we're going to kind of segue into the negative aspects of social media. And for time's sake, my points aren't really too long. So for time's sake, I'll just kind of run through them a little bit. Number one is temptation. Look, there is great temptation on the internet and on social media, and I think we need to explain to our kids. I know we need to explain to our kids the dangers of social media and the dangers of the internet, because we can't go in unprepared. The Bible talks about over and over again how we need to understand the plan of the enemy, right? We need to come into situations having girded our loins with truth, right? We need to put on the armor of God and be equipped, be prepared to fight the battle. So we need to explain to each other and our children, especially our young people, the incredible danger of temptation on social media, whether that be the biggest thing we see is sexual temptation, right? People post pictures they shouldn't be posting. There's stuff on there that no one should be looking at, but especially young children, right? So that would be, in my mind, the number one biggest thing and biggest danger from social media. So
I I agree. If it's fine for me to comment, I'll just throw in my point here. This was actually what I was considering one of the biggest dangers.
yeah,
The biggest danger I have listed, but for sure. There's, as you mentioned, there's just so much extreme, vulgar, violent, sexual, like just content on social media,
yeah,
on almost every platform. Some are
yeah,
better than others.
sure,
Some are awful.
yep,
Um, yeah, uh, and it's all run with a logical process that is designed to get you to be focused on it,
to stay,
right?
yep,
Yes, to stay there, to dwell on it, to constantly be reminded of it, to be seeing it over and over again. Um, it's kind of crazy. I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but if you're scrolling through like reels on Instagram, that's one of the ways that like I probably engage with social media passively the most is I'll scroll through reels
yeah,
sometimes or shorts on YouTube. I'm bad about that. But if you linger on something that you like, what is this video? This is interesting. Like one thing that usually comes up is like I'll see a recipe or something or food that looks good if I'm really hungry. If you'll notice, then if you keep scrolling for a little bit, all your reels become that.
yeah,
um,
yep,
it's because it's an algorithm designed to take the hesitation and say, "Oh, you must have liked that. Here's a little bit more."
Hmm.
And if it happens again, "Oh, here's a little bit more. Here's a little bit more." That's how it works. And so if one of those things, this is also what's bad, and I this is one of those things where I haven't pulled the trigger, but I've considered it. I probably just need to get rid of anything that has reels at all because you
Yeah.
can't control what comes up. Like you have no control over what the algorithm decides to feed you next. Um, and so you can kind of just be forced to witness some things.
Sure.
Um, and so we've talked about that. You mentioned this, that one of the biggest things is like sexual content. Well, if you hesitate for like even a little bit, it's gonna come up again and again.
Yeah.
And also, this is another thing that I don't think is necessarily thought of. Social media is usually said that it's like most damaging for women, and that's and or especially like young girls. And that while there are many detriments to that, I don't think they necessarily talk about the young men as
Sure.
much. At least
Yeah.
in my experience, it wasn't as highly emphasized. I don't think.
Hmm.
Um, but the algorithm definitely plays to demographics.
Yeah.
It definitely plays to age, gender, location. It kind of it knows.
Yeah.
So like my content that I watch on YouTube, right, for instance, is very similar to my. I won't say like very similar. It's probably closer to my sister than it is my wife, but it's very close to my sister. Um, my sister's content, things like that. But our ads are very different,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Well, why is that? Because they know that I'm a young man.
Yeah.
They're betting on the fact that I'm going to see something that will trigger me to engage with that more than it will trigger her, and so they show us different things.
Yeah.
They know those things about us, and so like it's designed to entice you. It's designed to be tempting. And so like you said, we have to go in with that understanding because if we don't, we're going to get trapped.
Yeah.
uh and yeah, anyway, this is one of the worst things. I try not to be too anti social media, especially since we're trying to actually do this on social media.
Yeah. Definitely.
But if there's a reason to quit social media, this is probably it.
Yep. For sure. For sure.
Anyway,
Um.
I didn't
And,
mean to steal your thunder with your
oh
point,
no,
but
no, it's fantastic, and we got a couple knocked out too, so that's fantastic. But yeah, no, those are some incredible points. Very true. My second one is time management. Look, I my gracious, and we kind of talked about this a little bit in really our first episode of Beyond the Building with kind of fasting from your phone, right? Just such a time waster. It's a time sucker, honestly. It sucks time away from us because like yesterday, I was trying to go to bed. I'd gotten off the phone with my girlfriend, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go to bed. And I got on Reels, and it was like 45 minutes later to an hour, and I'm just like, what have I done to myself, genuinely? So, it's that type of stuff that's like, it is an incredible time waster. If we don't have control over it. Now, there is a potential for control. We can have control over those things. But if we don't have that self-control, it's going to get to us. And that reminded me of 1 Corinthians 6:12. Paul explaining that he's not going to be brought under subjection by anything, right? He's not going to let the things of this world control him. The only thing that should have control over us is God. And what he says to do, that should take the preeminence in our lives, because in a way, we are servants of God, and he has the control over us in that he gives us directives. He gives us what to do, and he guides our life as opposed to the things of this world. So that's what I would say with some time management things.
no, for sure. And it's just it's one of those things that it's like you don't really think about until you're, like you said, an hour or two into it, and you're like, well, what have I done today? Like,
Yep.
like it really is. It's like it's one of those things where it makes you wish you were born like in the 1800s. Um, Disease and low life expectancy, I'm not about that, but not having distractions constantly, that's okay. Um,
Yep.
yeah, that wasn't one of my main points. But yeah, I definitely agree with that. So, my next point, and really these last 2 points that I have are pretty similar, so I'll probably just group them together if that's okay.
Yeah.
Um, but it's that, right, first, it can damage our self confidence.
Yeah.
Uh, Social media, generally speaking, it's fake. We design personas, we curate our profiles so that it looks great and that it doesn't have any of the bad stuff in life. And
Yeah.
if you see that, okay, what are you going to think about your life? Generally speaking, I don't think that this is, a new revelation. If you see only ever see the good in everyone else's lives and you never see anything bad going on, and you look at your life and you think, well, my life doesn't look like that. My life looks pretty bad. Well, okay, you're probably going to have some self confidence issues, or
Yeah.
at least be self critical when you otherwise probably shouldn't be. And then also, it's like it's just genuinely fake. People doctor photos. People make stuff up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a curated experience. It's not real. It's meant. That's what one of the reasons why I was saying it should not be a replacement for genuine social interaction, because it's fake. Um, and this has a lot of effects that have been shouted from the rooftops for probably years mostly, but for a pretty long time. Right? It makes uh, girls compare themselves to other girls. Guys think they need. There's like this hustle culture
Yeah.
that a lot of guys kind of get roped into. It's like, okay, you're not an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Stop pretending. Um, and then even just like, I mean, as I'm getting older and like I've seen in kind of older people, just comparing yourselves to like other parents, things like that.
Mm.
Right? There's a lot of comparison that happens because it's a curated experience where you're creating a fake persona,
Yeah.
um, and that's not good. I won't read these verses for the sake of time, but we need to be we need to think. We need to be mindful of the fact that right, everyone is flawed, um, and then also right, we are the fearful and wonderful work of God. Psalm 139:14 emphasizes that we are made just as good as anyone else. We are made in God's image. Genesis 1:26 through 27 illustrate that. And we've been chosen by God. Ephesians 1:4. We we are as good as we're ever going to be because of what God's done for us. We don't need to be comparing ourselves to others,
Yeah.
especially when, if you can keep in mind, right? Okay, they wanted me to see this.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. It's fine to want to share the good moments from your life, but just keep in mind that's not everything.
Yep.
Um, yeah, and the my last point, and then pass it on to you if that's
Yeah.
fine,
Definitely.
is that it promotes self centeredness. Uh, it can feed our selfishness, right? And this is something that probably don't necessarily think of when you get in social media, but I see in a lot of people. Sometimes myself included. I don't think I do that now, but I did at one point. But it can kind of feed an inward focus, right? We are curating our profile, our persona. We're writing our bio. We're A lot of this is me focused,
Yeah.
right? Then also it generates an obsession with likes and dislikes and followers and tracking numbers and growth and comparing it to others. These things don't matter, but they're trained to make you think that they matter,
Yep.
right? Well, this post got so many likes. Well, okay, well, so and so got more likes on their post about the same event. Well, what are they doing? What do I need to do to get the same amount of likes? Do people just not like me as much?
Yep.
Things like that. That's just it's kind of built into the system,
Mm-hmm.
and along that same line, it can just grow an envy towards others in us. Um, and then also, right, there is, and I kind of mentioned this before, but there's a degree of separation between us and the people we're interacting with, and that can lead to a lot of damaging things, right? It can lead to us thinking, okay, well, I know all of my thoughts. I obviously have thought through this. This person left a one sentence comment to a video. They must be an idiot, and then respond to like that one sentence. You don't know anything about them. You may know about them. You may not know anything about what they think, about what they said. You just know what was there. And so it just kind of generates this really shallow social interaction where you know everything you're thinking, you know everything they can get along, out in a post or in a string of texts, and you're missing so much. And I think it allows us to kind of fall into an echo chamber where we are reassuring ourselves, well, I've thought this through, I've done the research, and yet they're thinking the same thing on the other side, and they're thinking the same thing about you that you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And it just creates this very proud, self-centered culture. Um, and so I have several verses about this, but I'll kind of read these points and then include the verses for you to look up on your own time. But we must value others as better than ourselves, Philippians 2:3. We must encourage others, building them up, Romans 15:2. We're called to deny ourselves for the sake of Christ, Mark 8:34. And our lives are God's, not our own, 1 Corinthians 6:19 through 20. And I think if we can remember those things, it will help us to not be so self-centered just in general, but then also to keep in mind this is not really the interactions I have on social media are not real social experiences.
Yeah.
They're brief moments in time where I need to be thinking, okay, let's put myself in their shoes. what how can I engage with this in a way that is trying to bridge the gap that exists between us? Yeah.
Yeah. No, definitely. And that really flows right into my point, which is, where does our worth lie? Right? My final point is, does our worth, social media can oftentimes make our worth based on that. So, the social aspect of, like you said, what I post and how someone responds to that. And especially with young people, because they spend so much time on social media, there's this, well, that's my identity. That's where my worth lies, in these numbers, in these likes, in these comments. But we have to remember, our identity, if one is a Christian, our identity is in God, in Christ. If we make our identity something of this world, that's uncertain. The things of this world change every single day. But our identity should be in Christ, who is eternal, who is faithful, who keeps his promises. So we can really get bogged down in that, and that can be a real detractor that social media creates, is this identity crisis within people. So that's really the crux of the matter. But ultimately, kind of some concluding thoughts here is, social media is a very good thing. Can be. Generally, it is a very good thing if handled correctly. Right, and that's the key with this. If we handle it correctly, and if we let these principles guide our decisions on social media, and if we can recognize where our worth truly lies in Christ, then we can effectively use social media, or at least it will better help us effectively use social media. Everyone messes up, and it's hard. We live in a culture that presses social media. You got to be on there. You got to do X, Y, Z, in order to be accepted. But if we remember and stay focused on where our worth lies, it will lead us into more success than the latter. So any concluding thoughts before we kind of close this out?
Yeah, I guess the last thing I'd say is that we've kind of picked on social media a lot in this episode, but you can find just as bad content in other forms of media, like books or what have you. You can compare yourself to others just by existing around other people. So it's not necessarily to say that the things that social media are unique to social media. It's just that so many people are on it, so many young people are on it, and I think personally it's really easy. It's much easier to fall into those pitfalls through that medium. But like you said, TJ, it really, what really matters is how we use it.
Yep.
Like anything, are we responsible? Are we using this form of media, this tool, as Christians, or are we using it as the world uses it?
Yep.
And I think if we keep that in mind, we can try to reach a balance. That may mean that you know than you do with others. That may mean that you don't engage with every part of the social media platform, uh, but there are so many that it would kind of be a really long episode if we were to go through all that. So, yeah. Anyway,
Yeah, no, definitely. Those are some fantastic points. So, well, with that, we thank you all for joining this discussion with us, and um, hopefully learning a little bit more about social media and how we as Christians can use social media to our advantage, and some pitfalls to look out for in using social media if you so choose. So as always, we love interacting with you guys. We appreciate the comments that we've been getting. We appreciate the feedback. And if you want to message us, you can email us at beyondthebuilding51314@gmail.com. You can also find us on Instagram at beyondthebuildingofficial. Please feel free to leave comments on our YouTube channel, on our YouTube videos. That's very much appreciated. So yeah. And with that, we will see everyone in the next episode of Beyond the Building.
Shining, thy light shall guide me in the narrow way. Precept and promise, law and love combining, till night shall vanish in eternal day.